Hello, Patreonites. I am talking now about the interplay between Venus and Mars. A little bit about what happens in your birth chart, but mostly about how they influence things going on in time present and some tips for what you can look for in the next month to 2 months. Now, Venus is, in very simple terms, Venus is what you want, and Mars is how you go after getting it. Venus is the goddess of love. Venus rules everything that's really important to us, what we value. Venus rules love, relationships, creativity, pleasure, money in the bank. And when Venus changes signs, the sign that she goes into colors our social mode. You'll notice I use that phrase fairly frequently in my forecasts. So Venus is currently in a place where she's, in theory, really comfortable. She's in her home sign of Taurus. She has 2 homes, Taurus and Libra. So she's in her first home, the earth sign of Taurus, where she's very focused on nature, physicality, sensuality, how things feel, how things taste. She's in no rush. Taurus is the slowest of the signs. And when Venus is in Taurus, it orients us toward the sensuality and physicality of experience, with a twist this time around because Venus has met up with electric Uranus, the cosmic agent of unexpected change. That was just before the weekend, and shook up a lot of stuff that either things that used to be comfortable, no longer seeming comfortable, and awakening us to new information, new ways of being, just shaking some stuff up. So she's in, I want to be, I want to take it to the bank, show me, feed me. I'm not going to get up and get it. It needs to come to me mode. And for those of you who had childhood books that were really important to you and are of a certain age, you may remember a book by Monroe Leaf. I believe it was published in the 40s, but it was still widely read in the 60s, called Ferdinand the Bull, who is taken away from his beloved cork tree and his happy little spot, and he's taken off to be a bull in the ring, and he really doesn't like it, and he ends up coming back under his cork tree, chewing the grass and feeling the warm breeze going between his ears. And so there's a bit of that going on. Now, that's Venus. Mars is the general energy level, how people are using their assertiveness and aggression, and the masculine expression of life, how people are going after things. You may recall that from a point in June last year to the very beginning of January this year, Mars was, for an unprecedented amount of time, seemingly an uncommon amount of time, in his home base of Aries, and that was stirring up a tremendous amount of combativeness. So Mars has just recently entered the sign of Cancer, which is it's a highly emotional sign. It's the first water sign of the zodiac. Cancer is ruled by the crab. That's the symbol. So there's a shell, but this squishy interior. And all this masculine Martian energy is in some ways not really comfortable in that kind of emotionality. So there can be kind of a pissiness, a crybabiness. I used the image of Mars in camouflage and army boots stomping about in the kitchen. People with Mars in Cancer sometimes are very much inclined towards cooking and nurturing, very homebody in that way. And Mars in Cancer can be incredibly protective of what it sees as its home, its turf, its loved ones. So putting these two together right now until, this is going to go on until May 8th. So for the next couple of weeks, Mars in Cancer and Venus in Taurus are in a really simpatico mode. Venus just wants to lie about and try new things and nibble, and Mars wants to serve them to her. They're sextile by sign, and this could put us all toward really tending to the kitchen, our own nurturing, what the role of food is. They're both food-oriented signs. They both take comfort in food. Cancer shows love through food. Taurus is much more interested, don't yell at me, you Taurus people out there, in its own experience. Whereas, Cancer wants to serve it up to you and make you eat it to show your love. I don't know if any of you had relatives like that. But for the next couple of weeks, our creative impulses, our social impulses in general are going to dovetail with how people are in general inclined to go about and do things. This will give kind of a languid air as an undercurrent, but that's going to change, all right? So enjoy it while it's here. This would be an excellent time to tend to put a lot of energy toward making your own living space comfortable, because trust me, a tornado is going to come through later in May. So this is a time to tend to stuff. You probably will not have the presence of mind to think about it later. Then on May 8th, Venus changes signs. She moves into the sign of Gemini, which is a very fast-moving sign. So she makes a noticeable gear shift. Venus in Gemini in the sign of the Twins, in a mental, intellectual, fast-moving sign. Gemini often has streaks of multitasking, of multiplicity. This is a sign of palling around. So not just, lying around eating things that make you feel good, but socializing through communicating, having and talking to lots of people and keeping things light and possibly joking quite a bit. Juggling lots of things, wanting to talk to people, wanting to be here, there, not wanting to be tied down, not wanting to spend your time sitting on the couch binging movies for a change, unless you have two things going on at once. And until June 3rd, we have this weird disconnect. So Venus and Mars move out of the simpatico relationship. They're not sextile by sign. They are in adjoining signs, which doesn't have an easy meeting place. This is the aspect that I often refer to as the piece of gravel that's in your shoe that you just can't quite get out, and you keep taking your shoe off and hitting it and thinking you've got it empty, and you put it on and it's still there. This is the aspect that I often talk about in terms of an oyster that gets sand in the shell, and there is an irritant, and the irritant just won't go away and won't go away and won't go away, and ultimately builds a protective casing around it that creates something of beauty, as in a pearl. So our desire, what we want, and our socializing mode is going to be mildly out of sync, not open warfare, but mildly out of sync with how we're using our energy. So there's still a part of us that's very inclined toward nurturing and tending, and how can I create something that brings security to the people that I love. Maybe you find yourself this sounds strange, but I'm going to say it anyway. Talking on the phone. Yes, some people actually still talk on the phone, or watching videos, multitasking in the kitchen while you're preparing food. So there is this talking to a lot of people, gathering information from a lot of people, at the same time that you're still very much inclined toward this protective mode. And it's possible that, mark my words, men during this time might end up being more needy than women. I know there's no precedent for that in your experience or in reality, but we could be watching that. And Venus's shift into Gemini is part of a multi-stage shift into a much faster pace of living. So Mars being, which is going to color all of May. So Mars being in Taurus could actually help slow us down slightly, remind us, you're hungry, you need to eat something. Yes, unbelievably, some people do have a difficulty remembering that. And then when we get into June, on June 3rd, Venus moves into Cancer, which is the sign that Mars has been hanging out in. And they are both in the same sign from June 3rd to June 12th. And this is fascinating because by this time, we will be in the thick of the next eclipses, and there will be a tremendous amount of activity going on in the sign of Gemini involving talk and information, and the pace of life will be amping up and up and up and up and up. And for this 1 week, in the week in between eclipses, there's one at the end of May, there's one on June 10, what we want and how we go about getting it are unified by sign. So we may be homebodies. That might be how we deal with stuff. We might be much more family oriented. We might be more nurturing in general in our relationships. We could be tending to our creative projects, our financial endeavors, tending to them like they're a garden or like they're something that we want to have grow and be something that can support other people. So I really encourage you to watch for these changes in atmosphere and see if you can start picking up when they're happening. They ought to be really noticeable in the news, and they should be noticeable in the things you see going on around you in your own life. So I hope you will comment as these things happen. And again, just to give you some a framework for this, from now, which is April 24th, until May 8th, they're incompatible signs. Venus in Taurus, Mars in Cancer. On May 8th, Venus shifts into Gemini, and from May 8th until June 3rd, she's in Gemini while Mars is still in Cancer. So they're in neighboring signs, not quite jibing. There's something that has to be jostled, something that has to be moved around a bit. And then June 3rd through June 12th, they are in the same sign of Cancer. A happy place for Venus. By then we'll be used to Mars being there. So let me know what happens, and I hope that this is helpful and useful.